Get with me. I deal with reality. Loosen your mind to the truth and don't get mad at me. No politician can give you peace. If you trust Jesus, why do you vote for a beast? Emancipation is long overdue, so it becomes procrastination, because freedom is within you. For some reason we think we're free, so we'll never be, because we haven't recognized slavery. You still a slave, look at how you behave, debating on where and when and how and what master gave.
Hello everyone, welcome to This Week in Tyranny, a weekly show about authoritarianism, government overreach, and global injustice. And let's start it off by saying, like every week, that if tyranny is not at your doorstep, that's because there's someone in the street keeping it at bay. And that's what we do here. Today is February 10th, Friday of the year 2023. This is episode 10 already, 10 episodes. And there will be 100 soon, because one thing about tyranny is we'll never be short on material in this show. We are being given new material every day, every week. So let's go on with this. There's a bit of a playful, fun, enjoyable episode for me, informal. There have been a couple of serious weeks, and this week I actually didn't know my topic until last night. Realized it's Friday already coming up. What are we going to talk about on This Week in Tyranny? Well, I had to go no further than just going back to the State of the Union address given by Joe Biden. And definitely informal suits it. No doubt about it, because of how much of a joke politics is in general. So we talked about Tyree Nichols last week. We talked about the militarization of police. We talked about mass shootings. A lot of serious topics. So it's good to have a lighthearted topic and talk about the president of this nation and the things they talk about. This is episode 10, like I mentioned. So why not begin with a tarot card? Tarot card number 10. I just thought of this before I started, and there's a lot of connections that can be made. I know people like these. People think it's real spooky to have tarot cards. But the tarot can be used. Conclusions can be drawn just like they can be drawn from the State of the Union address. Does that mean the State of the Union address is something to take to the bank and hinge your well-being on to make important decisions based off of it? No, but what is it about the Wheel of Fortune, card number 10, that connects to the State of the Union address? It's because the State of the Union address is basically, while it has two purposes, it's an annual hope ritual. The State of the Union is when the country gets together, looks at the president, puts their life on hold, and then the president, the leader of the country, takes them on a journey where he talks about the narrative, takes them on a trip, and tries to motivate them not to overthrow the government. That's basically what it is. To go to work the next day, to keep going, keep voting. Just everything's okay, we're going to fix it. It's an annual hope ritual. This is how it is year in, year out. I didn't really pay attention to the one last year, even though I did see it, I believe. But I remember the one Donald Trump did, and I'll compare and contrast a little bit, because when I saw this, I know everybody's saying this guy Joe Biden is senile. I didn't see it. This was a real good speech. Look at how much energy that has. That's a young man over there, Joe Biden. People are telling me he can't get his words out. He was pretty effective. It was a pretty impressive speech. And it seems like he's a more effective speaker than Donald Trump. Donald Trump spoke a lot of truth, but he didn't have that magic right there. It looked like he was channeling Barack Obama. It looked like he had Barack's spirit. You know, half joking, half serious. But what can be drawn from this? And then I'll tie this back into the Wheel of Fortune. It has two purposes. The State of the Union address, I already mentioned how it is a hope ritual, and that's the exoteric, meaning the surface level. That is the surface level meaning and purpose and significance of that speech, is that it's like a pimp-like motivational speech. And I say pimp because that's exactly what it is. When we know how life is right now, we know how tight money is, we know how tough these times are. The standard of living is pretty bad right now, and this guy comes out and tries to sweet talk you into thinking it's not as bad as it is. A little motivational pep talk. So you go to work the next day and you don't really think about how bad it is. You don't really want to hold them accountable. You just say, okay, it's going to get better. That's the surface level significance of it. And that surface level has to do a lot with the Wheel of Fortune, because what is the Wheel of Fortune? In the tarot, that is the bottom level. This is where everybody is in the world that is uninitiated. The 99% of people in the world that are uninitiated, meaning they are not initiated into the traditions of knowledge. That doesn't mean getting into the tarot specifically, but that means getting into a journey for the truth, because the truth has always been kept under lock and key. The divine right of kings, they never wanted to give you access to the truth, to knowledge, because if you have access to knowledge, you will not be spinning the Wheel of Fortune anymore. And the State of the Union is all about spinning the Wheel of Fortune. Just like at the casino. You spin the Wheel of Fortune. And you know how it is at the casino, the house always wins. So it is not until you go away from the table and move up from the Wheel of Fortune that things change. Which brings me to the esoteric meaning. Esoteric meaning the hidden, the occult meaning. The State of the Union address is also communication between people who are in the know. That is like a progress report for how the dark great work is going. And the dark great work is the building of a slavery system, a total totalitarian slavery system where free will is no longer, where people have no freedom at all. And it is really an upside down system where Satanism is basically the religion of the world, and nobody is really living life at all. That is a state which is really death. That's the dark great work. You could say it's like the pyramid that's on the dollar bill, but really a better symbol would be an upside down star, because as the symbol of the Baphomet, right, the goat. But this is not even what this video is about. This is about what politics is. It really is sports. And that's why you can view somebody like Joe Biden and look at how he performed. Oh, he did really well. You know, he did his thing. Joe Biden, 10 out of 10. Great speech. But people who think this is going to affect their life in any way, only maybe in how things are going with the economy, but really that is not Joe Biden or any of the lawmakers really making those decisions. Those decisions are coming from the top down. And politics is really sports. So anybody who gets too involved in this about about Donald Trump, about now Joe Biden, whoever's going to be after him, does this really matter? I'm going to be watching the Super Bowl on Sunday, but does it really matter if the Eagles win the Super Bowl? Is that going to have any kind of a difference, any kind of an impact in our day-to-day life? It isn't. So we can appreciate people's skills. We can talk about it. We can criticize this and that, but let's not forget this is not the real world over there. And the State of the Union is, that's why it's such a joke to me, because now that as I am older and I have more knowledge, and I've heard a couple of these now, it's so funny that it's like cartoon characters who are trying to be taken seriously. We know you're playing a role. We know you guys are playing the role very well. But this has really no impact on your life. But things that do have an impact, that's what they talk about. So we'll have to address it. It seems like always a State of the Union address by the president, or really any kind of speech given to the people, it has to start with the economy and a lot of talk about the economy, which is, why do they do that? Because that's really the only thing that matters to people. Otherwise, they would not even be interested in politics. And what people do not understand is that the politicians don't really have a serious impact on your standard of living. Your standard of living is directly tied to how much power you have and how far the agenda, the dark great work, the totalitarian agenda has progressed. So it's progressed pretty far following the pandemic, because that's what the pandemic was designed to do, right? The responses to the pandemic, everybody was saying, everybody knew there was going to be an economic hardship. But it's not even that. It's the government actions following the pandemic, the responses to the pandemic that even caused that. This was going to happen regardless. And now, if you're really paying attention to the initiated, you know that that was the whole reason for the pandemic, is to have an excuse, right? The war in Ukraine happened later, and now when inflation has gone up so much, prices have gone up, and you have to work more for less money. Now, somebody like a president can speak back to COVID and talk about that is the crisis that resulted in these hard times. But these hard times resulted because more power has been given away from the people. The people have less knowledge. They have less will to fight back. Tyranny and slavery is just progressing and going forward. It is now their counterattack. Okay? So he talks about Joe Biden. He talks about the jobs are coming back. He talks about blue collar. And every president does this. They always do this. They do this every year. Donald Trump did the same thing. They want to speak up like they're for the working man more. And I really hope people don't buy this, because these guys haven't worked a day in their life. They are thieves. These people in government, they are stealing your money. They don't work for their money. Government is a parasite. You give them the money. You feed them. And they talk about blue collar. And people just believe them because they don't have enough knowledge or will or care to take it over and eliminate government, United States government or otherwise. These people are illegitimate. They're playing dress up, and they've tricked you into thinking that they can handle it for you. And really, we let them handle it for us. We've given away our personal responsibility. Joe Biden says that 2 years ago the economy was reeling. Like I said, the pandemic, that was the whole reason for it. And he said unemployment is at a 50-year low, and then thunderous applause. Unemployment is the lowest it's been in 50 years. And that's supposed to be a good thing, but what it really means to me is it's so hard to make a living that almost everybody is working. You cannot be jobless because you're gonna starve. You're not gonna have enough food, right? So that's what has happened. 50 years ago was 1972? Yeah, I'd say that those were the times where the prosperity and freedom in this country was already over the hill. I know many people came to America in the 90s, and it was still good back then until September 11th, 2001. And this is what I hear from people who have experienced this directly, but I'd say that was the tail end already, right? Freedom and prosperity in America. It was around that time. It was going down. Maybe before you could be unemployed. You could find a way to make a living because it wasn't such a parasitic, predatory system squeezing everything out of you, making you work longer hours for less money. And that's just proof of how hard it is to survive out here. It's just proof of hard labor. And then he announces there was a lot of United States nationalism, like a lot of MAGA type nationalism. He talked about that. He announced something that all construction materials have to be made in the United States, and I don't know in reality how true that's going to hold, but just saying that, what does it mean, all this nationalism? It sounds good maybe to many people. It sounds like the power is returning home, right? The jobs are not in China. The materials are not going to be from somewhere else. They're not going to be foreign. They're going to come from here. So that means we're going to be self-sufficient, right? Like power to the people. No, that's not what it means. This just means that government is in charge of another aspect of where materials can come from. Just another step in the command economy, which leads to what? The ultimate command economy is communism, where there is no economy unless the government approves of it. And really, that's just a more extreme new version of feudalism, which has always been the system of government since the ancient times. Feudalism. You've got the royalty, and then everybody else works on their land. They're debt slaves. Yeah, that's feudalism. He also bragged, Joe Biden, that they've capped the cost of insulin. And you could go so many different directions with this. You could talk about why people have diabetes in the first place. And you could blame government for all different all of those different things, but that's not even where I'm going with it. Where I'm going with it is all this kind of economic intervention. You're gonna cap the cost of this, raise prices, lower prices. People hear that prices are lower and they get excited about it, but that's just such a two-dimensional, short-term way of thinking about it. What does economic intervention really mean that when you capped insulin? Who gives you the right to cap anything? It's gonna cost how much it costs, and that's not even just capitalism. That's the real free market, you know. But going further, getting off of the wheel of fortune, you know, progressing higher to up the tree into knowledge. What is money at all? What is money in general? That you're going to cap the cost of insulin, meaning that you can somehow impose what prices are going to be, like you're going to decide the value. And all this is, money is just the control system itself. Money is what allows the government, or what allows us to be in a free range farm. And that's the way, if you want people, if you want to give them the illusion of freedom so they could go outside, they could go wherever they want, but everything costs money to do, well, you've got them. Those are the handcuffs. Those are the chains. And a lot of people can't imagine a world without money. I know. So there's a lot of work to be done there, but that's all it is paper money. All it is, if it was gold or whatever, all money really is it is like your ID, your status symbol for access to resources. Money is just a language, a shared language that tells the person if you're allowed to have this, right? So it's just a way of seeing where you are on the hierarchy. And that's how the slavery system works, without actually having to have us in handcuffs and chains, and having us think that we are making our free will decisions and that there is a way out. It's just the invisible fence on the free range farm called Earth. That's money right there. Speaking of money, and you spoke of it a lot, I want to go on to the next topics, but he talked about money and the economy so much. He said that the tax system is not fair. He talked about how the big billionaire companies didn't pay their fair share of taxes. They paid zero in taxes, and that's not fair. So he's going to fight for the people, and he's going to make them pay their taxes. And this is just backwards and hilarious in itself, because that doesn't mean we're getting any of their money back. That just means more people get their money stolen. You know, and I do mean stolen, because the government has no right to take anything out of anybody's pockets, right? Just like I don't have the authority to take the money out of your pocket. Doesn't matter if they elected you or not. There's no such thing. So the tax system isn't fair, but what people don't realize is that when corporations have to pay more taxes, they're just going to put the prices up themselves so they could keep their profit margin, because they can do that. They can play the long game and up the prices and call your bluff. Say you're going to tax Kleenex. You're going to tax the paper towel company. You're going to tax Bounty or whatever the parent company of those are. What do you think is going to happen? It's going to go up $2, and what are you going to do? You're not going to buy them? You're going to have to buy them. So who pays that tax? You. And that's the way money works, is that it's a pyramid scheme. So it shows where you are in the pyramid. And when you talk about the people who are above you on the pyramid, you want to attack them. Well, they're above you for a reason. They're going to make you pay for that. They're going to make you hold them up. So, and when he talks about people, the corporations not paying taxes, what about the biggest corporation on earth? The biggest corporation in this country is the United States government. The government is a corporation, right? By definition. And it is the biggest one, because all of the other ones have to answer to it. Nobody else can tell the government what to do. I know there are multinational corporations that are starting to do that with little governments, but we're talking about the United States of America government. Nobody tells that government what to do. That's the corporation. That's the number one corporation. So what is a corporation, right? That's a business. That's a way for a business to operate. But you can't hold one person liable. So a corporation, the reason corporations exist is because a corporation does business like you and me, like a real person. So if you were to sue me, the corporation goes to court, but corporations don't go to jail. They dissolve. They always elude any kind of prosecution or liability, because it consists of shareholders, right? And that's what's happened with the world. There used to be a king, but then the king can easily be killed, and everybody can see the king. And when people see that their standard of living is low, they look at the king and they're saying, "Hey, that guy's taking all of our money. That guy's killing us," and they can remove him easily. But instead, you've made the corporation called government now, and everybody believes this is legitimate. And then you got the State of the Union address of a guy talking about corporations like he's not part of the biggest gang, the biggest penny pinching, pocket stealing, thief, pickpocket in the world. So, but as this went on, he repeated one message. He repeated, "Let's finish the job." He repeated this like 20 times. "Let's finish the job." And that makes me think of building the dark great work, building the slavery system. And to those who are in the know, who are initiated, who aren't on the Wheel of Fortune, they know what he's talking about with "let's finish the job." They never stop. That's why there's another episode of these every week. And there will be until this whole system goes down. Let's finish the job. So after he finished talking about the economy and money and just basic things, he went on to what happens every time, every State of the Union address. I remember Donald Trump doing this 2 years ago, 3 years ago. They invite people. They do like a story related to these guests that they invite based on what happened that year in the world. And then they make their points based off of that like rhetoric, emotional reaction that the viewer gets from seeing those people. So story one, he had Tyre Nichols' family, his parents, and he talked about, he repeated how Black and brown Americans have to have that talk with their kids about, if the cops pull you over, do this and this so you don't get killed, so you don't lose your life. And this part of his speech I definitely agree with. A lot of many things he said here, they made sense, right? He's not just a liar 24/7, but you have to read between the lines to see where the lies are, and how whatever he says that is based in truth is used to deceive and what it's trying to accomplish. So with this story, he said that his parents said something good must come from this, and that made me think of order out of chaos. And that's what they do. And that's why a lot of these traumatic events are contrived, and they are done by members of the government and different kinds of, people of occult orders and so on and so forth. These things happen. It's called a false flag, right? Now, I'm not saying Tyre Nichols was that, but a lot of these things happen like that. So the chaos is created so that the solution can come from that. And what is he talking about? He's talking about, I guess, police reform or whatever. But the reason I brought this up when he said this is because he said that cops risk their life, and that cops are good people. We know that they risk their life every day. I would just like to say that so do gang members and drug dealers. They risk their life too. It doesn't mean they're good people. It doesn't mean what they're doing is right, just because it requires some sort of bravery. I won't even say courage, but you gotta be brave to go and risk your life, even if you're a piece of garbage doing immoral things and stealing from people. He said that the cops he knows, or he talks about the cops, the police officers that are good, decent, and honorable. And I just want to say that good would mean that a good person is somebody who understands morality and sticks to it. So somebody who doesn't harm others, right? Somebody who helps others. But even if he doesn't help others, he at least he's not a bad person. What's a good person? It's just a person who's not a bad person. But police officers are not that, because you're giving somebody a ticket. You're keeping somebody always in duress. you have your gun on your hip, ready to reach for it. That's not a good person. Decent. Decent has to do with decency. What is decency? Maybe like having respect for older people, seeing somebody on the street and you help them carry their bags, but not under the threat of violence. So they're not decent people, and they're definitely not honorable, because having honor means you have your own principles and you stand on them. But order followers don't have principles. They follow other people's orders, which are the principles to them. So good, decent, and honorable, no, no, and no. Then he had the second story about a person who stood up to one of the mass shooters recently, right? He talked about how he wrestled the gun away from them, and so forth. And then he, of course, called for the ban of assault weapons, which everybody saw that coming. I thought he'd actually say more about the assault weapons, but again, this is order out of chaos. We knew they were going to use this because they want the assault weapons, which of course there's no such thing as an assault weapon. If we're talking about AR-15s, AK-47s, M4A1s, M16s, these are weapons to defend against tyranny. They're self-defense weapons, right? And the reason we need those big guns with the high-capacity magazines is because that is what the government is going to use against us, and they're going to send in their order followers known as the military to do it, right? And then in a third story, he has the parents of somebody who overdosed, young girl, and talks about the fentanyl and fighting that. And of course, my heart goes out to her parents, everybody that overdosed. I know people personally, many people who have overdosed. It is definitely a crisis. But then he, of course, uses this and exploits the crisis to talk about what does he want to do to combat the drug crisis? Does he want moral education, talking about objective morality? Does he want to have young people spend less time in school to require them to do less? Does he want to, if you talk about lowering the cost, do you want to forgive the student loans or lower the cost of education so these young people, don't feel so stressed out about their future? Do you want to do anything like that? No. What he wants to do is work with different corporations and work with UPS and FedEx to have more detection at the border, to have all kinds of drug detection, all kinds of things that will find the drugs. And of course, this is another war on drugs thing, just like the war on terror, where it is not supposed to even solve the original issue. What it's supposed to do is give them a reason to implement a lot of crazy, tyrannical, draconian detection systems, enforcement systems, talking about militarizing the police and criminalizing you. That is what they want to do. They just want to look for more drugs, but they're not even looking for the drugs because government uses the drugs to its advantage. The black market is a tool of the government. But what they want to do is have a reason to search you. They want better high-tech searching technology to search you, to search for those assault weapons. Drugs are just a byproduct. And another thing, I know it's sad and terrible when somebody overdoses and dies, but you know what? That's your free will choice to take into your body whatever you will, just like any kind of corrosive industrial cleaners. You hate to be cold-hearted when it comes to stuff like this, but when you talk about the issue of you're going to restrict what we can take, you're talking about combating a public health crisis, right? Solving a public health crisis. But then your solution to that is something that takes away freedom. It's not going to happen. Okay? And then the final story. This is really the climax of it all. This is the finality where it all comes home. The whole State of the Union, it all comes home, and it's clear what the whole point was. And he has Paul Pelosi, Nancy Pelosi's husband, who was attacked. He talks about, your standard, how unfortunate and tragic the event was. He survived, of course. He talks about how strong of a person he is and blah, blah, blah. He mentions a few things. and I want to really translate it and break it down, because this is where the esoteric part comes in. This is where blink and you'll miss it. He talks about we cannot have political violence in America, meaning, violence against Nancy Pelosi and her husband Paul, violence against any of the officials. But translation is, you don't touch the masters. That's what they're saying. They're saying the government is a higher class than the rest of the people he was standing up for so much, the blue-collar people. He's using Paul Pelosi as an example because that's what that event was. That's the lesson that came out of that. They wanted to show people, oh, look, these poor people, these poor old politicians, defenseless, they're getting attacked by these crazy domestic terrorist Americans. So when he talks about political violence, that's what he's talking about. He's not talking about real violence like in the streets, like happened to Tyree Nichols. He's talking about, we need to make sure these guys in Washington are untouchable. That's what that means. He also says we have to honor the results of elections and not deny them. So, of course, a subtle shot at Donald Trump. But really what that means is the whole election fraud narrative. What it comes out of that is, don't question what we say happened. Right? That's the whole point. That's the whole point. That's the reason anybody that talks about that, This Week in Tyranny episode 1 is to this day not on YouTube and will never be on YouTube, because out of all of the things that I've said, all of the real serious stuff I've said, real hard-hitting stuff that I thought was going to be censored and taken down, they didn't get taken down. The only censorship that I've ever had on this, on all of my platforms, because I'm not only on YouTube, I'm on BitChute and all kinds of social media, right? I've only had any kind of censorship when I talked about election and the results of the election, and that was on the first episode. That's why this playlist on YouTube only has starting from episode 2. And that's when they talk about election fraud. The reason they're so serious about cracking down on anybody that promotes that narrative is, we are the arbiters of truth. You don't question what we say happened. So no political violence means you don't touch us. You don't touch the ruling class. Honor results of the election means you do not question what we say is real. And he said, restore the faith in institutions. And I really like that he said that, because this is what I've been saying. Now that when Donald Trump was not the president anymore, I looked on those 4 years, and everybody who says that Donald Trump was trying to fight for American freedom and he was actually a good guy, what I say is the whole Trump presidency was created, was done to restore the faith in institutions. See, Donald Trump was kind of a voice for all of us who lost faith in the institutions. And now it's coming back around, and here's Joe Biden talking about see how things are going back to normal, and that's why he gives such an energetic speech. That's why the real hope message, he's got a little bit of bass in his voice now. There's some energy. It seems like the red, white, and blue is coming back. That's what it was for. They let a guy who was speaking a little bit of truth get to the presidency, and then they're going to they shot holes in all of his arguments. They used all his imperfections against him. And now what's happening is the old school system is coming back with restored faith in institutions. A very bad thing for all of us, the people of America, because these institutions are not going to stop until we are totally enslaved. Those are the institutions. Those institutions are illegitimate. And then the last thing he says, give hate and extremism no safe harbor. So he mentioned January 6th. He's talking about Paul Pelosi. What is he really talking about? He's talking about the narratives that they say are conspiracy and they say are anti-democracy, right? They say we're domestic terrorists. So give hate and extremism no safe harbor. When he says hate and extremism, what is he talking about? Is he talking about the extremism of the extreme violence that those police officers did to Tyre Nichols? No. Is he talking about the hate and extremism of taking like about 40-50% of all our earnings go to taxes? Is that extreme? Is that hateful? Is he talking about the way people are treated, by these institutions? No, he's talking about this. He's talking about this week in tyranny, and if Joe Biden is viewing this, welcome to the show. This is what they're talking about. People like me, that's who they say is hateful and extreme. And I'm extreme only in the sense that I believe in the truth and I believe in love 100%. So if extreme is 100%, then that is the case. Let me just sum them up real quick. No political violence, honor the results of the election, restore the faith in institutions, and give hate and extremism no safe harbor. That's their real rallying cry, and that's the counterattack to any kind of freedom or truth-speaking movement. And this is why you can't believe in any political candidates. You can't believe in Donald Trump. You can't believe in Q. You can't believe in DeSantis. It's not going to work out for you because, just like with the Wheel of Fortune, you're sitting there spinning the Wheel of Fortune and the house always wins, right? That's why the answer is to become initiated into the knowledge. Hope I didn't miss anything. That's the State of the Union. And he said that the State of the Union is strong, real strong. Had a little bit of nationalism, had a little bit of spirit, It looks like the people are ready. A weekend where a lot of energy is being channeled, Everybody's going to watch the Super Bowl. That is, Super Bowl gets as many viewers as the last 20 State of the Union addresses. But people watch the State of the Union address and they actually believe it. And this is not based in truth at all. Real life, These politicians don't do anything resembling reality. And it's not only the politicians, but it seems like they have everybody's ear. And I still have people that I talk to that we talk about the truth and everything, but you could still see that there's something within them that they want to find their star. They want to find their Patrick Mahomes. They want to find their Jalen Hurts, and they want their team to win the Super Bowl, and that's what it is. But this is not reality, and the NFL isn't scripted, but the stuff that goes on in the United States government for damn sure is. So don't follow the script. Stop spinning the Wheel of Fortune, and let's elevate. And until then, we're just going to go on with our lives, but I will be back next week on This Week in Tyranny.
You either vote for the mumps or the measles. Whether you vote for the lesser of two evils, you vote for evil. Politics and God are not equal, but the education to get on God is really lethal. People have more respect for a holy book than they do for a cow on a